everyone, and welcome back to the Secret Sunday session. Today, I'm joined by Tommy Herschel from Find Your Feet. Welcome, Tommy.
Thank you. Very appreciative. Thanks for having me.
You are more than welcome. Now, I'm very excited to have you on today, Tommy, because a lot of people that are not aware, I was one of those people that happened to attend one of your Growing Good Men workshops a little bit way back. And I know that we've spoken about this, but it honestly, I won't say traumatized my life, but changed my life and changed probably the tissue box beside me because I never walked away knowing that I've cried so much in my life after that session because of the space that you created and the opportunity for the young men in the room to open up and break down stigmas, break down barriers. And I still remember it was one thing that I still get goosebumps over, but in that session, there was a young kid that admitted how he had been bullied and the bullies were in the room. And then at the end of the session, the bullies came up and apologized to the kid. And
Yeah.
for me, that sticks with me forever. And it still is today. And I've been longing to chat to you. So I'm so grateful that we finally created the opportunity and the space because we don't create that opportunity for young men or men in general to have that conversation, to share the burdens that they're carrying, to
Mm.
share the struggles that they're going through in a space where they can feel appreciated by their peers. So thank you so much for coming on for my own sake. And for the sake of the community as well. Before we dive into the amazing work that you were doing in this space that I know that I have witnessed, for those people that are not aware of who you are, who is Tommy and what does he do with himself?
Oh God, that's such a good question. Hey, I reckon anyone that answers the question who they are, far out. It's evolving all the time who I am. I look back at who I was 5 years ago and I cringe. I look back at who I was 5 years before that and the same thing. I guess I'm a kid from Tugun, straight up, which I'm really proud of. So Queenslander, like I mentioned before, and you said find your feet, mate. She's find your feet up in Queensland.
Oh, sorry.
Mate, well, we only got coloured TV up there a couple of months, so we don't speak properly. Yeah, but I'm a Tugun boy, and that's a big part of me. What I grew up in down at the Tugun Footy Club and the people I grew up around, and as much as we all sort of grew up in and around this burden of being blokes and not being able to share, you know, things that were going on for us. I grew up in and around a lot of good culture as well, of respect and looking at someone in the eye and acknowledging someone. So yeah, I guess I'm a fella who's been on a journey and will always be on a journey, and every day I sort of take as an opportunity to get better. And yeah, sort of make sure I've got a team around me that when I need to, I can rely on, that are gonna, be there for me. So yeah, Chugan boy. I lived in pots and pans for a bit as well, up in Cairns. Went to PBC. I got two amazing kids, Betty and Alf, and yeah, like yeah, amazing wife. I'm really lucky to have an incredible woman in my life who sets a standard for me also, and yeah, so I think that's a little bit about me and where I'm
All I
at.
took from that is you're a Queenslander and you had a dish at my accent based on me being a New South Welshman. So
Yeah, well, you're a bit smarter than us Queenslanders, you New South Wales people. You got a big bridge in a fancy place where people go singing.
yet
So,
I believe you have relocated to New South Wales.
yeah,
So
well, I'm like, in the old days when the missionaries would travel the world and for God, and I'm down here trying to teach you New South Wales people, you know what's good
the
about
proper English.
it. No, it's beautiful. Yeah, I do. I live in Avalon, which is such an incredible spot. And yeah, I actually love the fact that I'm down here because yeah, I mean, I grew up in Queensland, and I love to be in a different place. Still, like yesterday, I was out in Haberfield, and I had lunch with two Greek fellas, Spiro Christopoulos and his father John, and it was beautiful. Like we sat there, and I got to speak to his father about how he's a migrant, and how hard his father worked, and all around us were Greek people, and they were speaking Greek, and it was beautiful. And I love that about Sydney. I love the fact that in the space of 3 hours I could go through 3 or 4 different cultures, And I think that's really important in life, that we step outside of our comfort zones and we listen to others. And yeah, I guess that's a big part of me still finding my feet every day, stepping
Mm.
into those different places. So I do
And I
love New
love
South Wales, I'll be honest.
I love the honesty. Now with Find Your Feet, obviously it's taken its own journey, something that you have embodied and loved working with throughout your lifetime. But why? Why start this journey? You could have been able to pursue your own pursuits and just work on yourself, but you decided to reach out and help others, specifically youth. Why is that the case?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because I mean, it could take me 4 hours to answer that, because I mean, the middle of it is, the bones of it is, I want to help as many people as I can not go through what I went through. And by doing that, I'm helping so many wives out there not go through what my wife had to go through, and what my kids went through. So by taking on this I guess mission in life, if I want to call it that, yeah, I'm out there, I guess, giving people the tools and skills to find their feet. And when they come into trouble or they come across trouble, they know what to do. They know the right thing to do. I was really blessed um, when I was 32. I mean, my old man, yeah, he left when I was 10. Mum and him split up, and he moved to Far North Queensland, and I just got angry straight away. Like, that was my thing. That's sort of how I went. And I remember when it all happened, mum turning around and saying, "Hey, I don't love your dad anymore." We're in the car on our way to Brisbane, and she had tears, like, it was really hard for her as well. And I remember her trying to talk us through it, and she just couldn't do it. Like, she just struggled to do it. And not because she was a cold woman or she didn't have any love, simply because she didn't know how to do it. She'd grown up with a father who traveled the world in the oil industry and worked super hard, in the jungles of the Amazon and places like this, where you had to be strong and resilient. And the same with her mother, and so she didn't know how to talk about these things. I remember, when I first came back to school after hearing about that split, I was just a different person. I was always a kid who suffered homesickness, and I suffered a lot of panic attacks, which we didn't use that term back in the day, panic attacks. It was just called homesickness. And I always suffered that. But when my father and mother split up, it happened even more. And I'd go to swimming training at Crumman State School there in the pool, and a Big Audio Dynamite song would come on, and it would trigger me. And I'd have to get home. And I'd get home and I'd ring my dad, and he drove a concrete truck, and I'd check he was okay. And I'd ring mum, and I always had this fear of death. And then when I went to school, I was the life of the party. I was loud. I was telling stories that weren't necessarily true because I wanted to fit in. But then I'd go home and I'd cry on my own. And I did that right up until I was 35 years of age, realistically. But the things in life that we do, like having children, and we're getting married and having careers, that all happened around me. But when I was on my own, I would cry and I would get angry and I'd get sad. Um, at 32 years of age, I was really lucky to meet this incredible young man called Bastian Mardrell, young Tiwi Island boy who lived in Camden in southwest Sydney, and he was playing rugby league. He got a cork in his leg one day, and went to the doctor the next day, and they said, "Look, it's just a cork." This happened for 6 weeks, until eventually his mother, Claire, who's an amazing woman, said, "Look, I'm not going anywhere until you tell us what's going on. Like, this is ridiculous." They did some scans, and they found out the following Tuesday that he had Ewing's sarcoma, a really aggressive form of cancer, and he had 6 months to live. Um, I was working in radio at the time in Sydney. I was an egomaniac. I was a functioning lunatic, alcoholic, I guess you'd almost call it. And here he was, 15 and a half. He'd been given a timeline. He was genuine. He was his own man. He was selfless. He was every bit the person that I wasn't. And I remember just meeting him going, wow, what an incredible human this guy is. In the 6 months that I hung around with him, I just saw him behave in ways that I wouldn't have. Like, I had an opportunity at Campbelltown Sports Stadium. I was the ground announcer there. I had an opportunity for him to get up on the big screen at half time and kick a ball in front of everyone. And he goes, "Mate, I don't want to do that. I've got my mates here. I'd rather just hang out in here." Whereas an egomaniac like me, I wanted to be out there. I wanted to be seen. And and that was filling all these spaces, you know, that I had in my heart from what I'd been through. And yeah, he was just an amazing fella. But one of the most amazing things he did, he was when he was 16, he had his 16th birthday, and it was a Saturday night, and he went to bed that night, and he didn't wake up until the Monday morning. And when he woke up, he, you know, his liver had started to shut down. His vision was going, and he was on his way out the door. And on the Wednesday when he passed, his mum rang me at about 6:30, and she said, Tommy, Bass is gone. He passed it at 6 o'clock. He passed half an hour ago. I wanted to let you know. And she said he did the most amazing thing this afternoon. I tell this story all the time. It just, you know, this is my turning point in my life, and it's the legacy of Find Your Feet. But his mum and dad said, I want you to walk me out in the backyard, and I just want to touch the earth with my feet just one more time. And oh, yeah, and she said, you know, they got out in the backyard, and he looked off into the sun, and then he looked at her and he said, hey, mum, tell my mates just to love life and don't waste it. Like, don't waste it. That was at 2 o'clock, and, you know, he passed at 6. When she told me that, it was 6:30. I still remember sitting on the floor. I probably had 8 or 9 beers. I was arguing with my wife about the mess in the house. I was arguing with my kids about the noise they were making. I wasn't loving life, and I was wasting it. And I was wasting it because it was easy to waste. I was doing all the comfortable things. I was drinking daily. I was arguing with people daily. I was being a victim and saying poor me about my father and my mother. And I'd done it for so long, and I was almost getting bored of it. But in that moment, you know, Bass left this line for me of where he stopped, and he said, I want to touch the earth with my feet one more time. And he said these words that changed my life forever. And I thought, you know, how often as fellas do we stop, or as humans do we stop and we take a moment and we think, all right, what do I need to do in this situation to be the best person that I can be? Now, that didn't really happen for me until another 3 years down the track when I was 35, and I'm in the room where I'm in now, and drinking with a couple of guys. And I'd watched the movie Lion a few days before, really sad movie about two Indian boys, and I'd just been weeping for 3 days after it. It was heartbreaking, and I explained to young fellas, though, this night, like this was the night where everything came to a head for me. And I explained, you know, like my laundry pile piled up, and everything I dealt with, or that I'd just jammed on the laundry floor, and I'd never washed it, and it just got to a point where I couldn't deal with it anymore. And two mates saying, you need to see a kinesiologist. I was like, mate, I'm from Tugun. Like, what the hell is a kinesiologist? The closest thing I know to a kinesiologist is the old guy who volunteers on a Sunday at the footy club doing rub downs, you know? And I just clicked, and I picked up a bottle of red wine. I sculled it top to bottom, and I threw it across the room. And I went on to trash the house till about 3:30 in the morning, screaming at my family, doing what I did really well, which was playing the victim, blaming everyone else. And I ended up underneath the house, banging my head against a wall, saying, I want to go home to Queensland. And I was saying, I want my mummy. Like, that's what I was screaming. I want to go to Queensland. I want my mummy. And my wife was standing there watching. You know, she's looking at me going, what's going on here? And I just wanted, that's all I wanted. I rang my friend that I normally ring all the time when I'm drunk, and I said, no one knows what it's like, no one cares. And he said, mate, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want you to ring me like this anymore. I love you. I love you so much. And that's why I'm pulling you up on this. No more. He said, you ring me tomorrow when you're sober. I love you. I love your wife. I just know that we can do better. And he said, I deserve better as a friend than you ringing me every night telling me how hard you got it. We're going to sort this out. Ring me tomorrow. It was amazing. I rang the next day. It'd been organised for me to get to a place here in Sydney where I got some help. I walked in. I was introduced to a counsellor called Elizabeth. And I sat down with her and I said to her, like, why was I calling out for my mummy? Like, I'm 35. And she said, because, darling, she's a beautiful old lady. She's be 75, 80 years of age. She said, darling, the reason you're crying out for your mummy is because you're a wounded boy. You behave like a little boy. When you don't get your way, you stomp your feet. When you don't get your way, you cry. You want everyone to know how you're feeling. She said, that's how a wounded boy behaves. But what we need to do is we need to get you to the point of being a functioning adult, because you're 35 and you've got kids and you've got an amazing wife. and that's my role, and I'm going to do that for you. But she said the reason you're still where you're at and behaving the way you're behaving is because you've never been accountable for anything. You've never owned anything, any of your behaviors, and you've never grown from any of this. And that's what we're going to do. And that was the day that, yeah, I guess I found my own feet and I took action. And yeah, I turned my life around. And it's been 7 years since that's happened. And I guess this is like the first year that I'm just having a really beautiful relationship with my wife. Um, you know, she was married to like a wounded boy for so long, and it's just beautiful now being a dad. It's beautiful being a husband. Beautiful doing the simple things like driving my daughter to school. And yeah, she's 14. She doesn't talk much, but just learning that driving to school is a great way to have a conversation about little things, and just enjoying that. And yeah, so that's I guess find your feet, and why I started, and why I'll do it forever. Like it's for me, it's not a business, it's not a foundation, it's not an organization, even though it is a foundation, but it's just, like for yourself, it's your story. It's what you live daily, and you don't want anyone else to go through what you've been through. And if they are, you want to help them not get out of it, because I don't reckon you ever get out of our situations, or anyone gets out of their situations, but we learn how to live with our situations. And I think that's what Find Your Feet does really well. Hopefully that answered what you
Oh,
asked.
oh, absolutely. Wow, congratulations on that journey, honestly. And even to admit that this year is probably the first year where you felt almost present in your relationships, like all that hard work that you have put in has finally, I'm not going to say paid off, because as you said, it's something that you continue to manage, but has finally gotten to a point where you can be present in the life that you are, and almost adhere to that promise and to that message throughout your whole journey of just go and just live and love your life. And the fact
Mm.
that you can finally feel that you can step into that now, what a journey. Like, congratulations.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's like I guess when I say like this is the first year, it's I've had to earn people's trust back. So most
Mm,
importantly, my wife, um, and my kids. Like the minute I spoke first on this, I remember it was at a big function. Sydney's 1,000 people. It's like 4 days after I've been into this place and had this epiphany, and it's awesome. Found my feet, and I sit down and everyone's clapping and cheering, and my chest is out, and here I am thinking I'm some kind of epic keynote speaker, and it was awesome. My wife looks at me and goes, "Are you kidding me? Like, mate, you've put me through so much, and so many other people through so much. You've got so much work to do. I, Mate, do not sit down and be proud of yourself in that way." Like, and it was awesome. It was so true. Like, and it's a big part of the work now. Like I say to young people, hey, you've gotten up and you've spoken. That's epic. But the work starts now. And how exciting is that? And it's about making people excited about that, and celebrating the fact that we've got work to do.
mm,
There's nothing better than overcoming a challenge. There's nothing better than facing a challenge. Nothing better than setting a goal and achieving it. Um, yeah, so I guess it's the same as this sort of thing. There's nothing better than being able to go, yeah, I've got a burden. I've got something that's holding me back or dictating my behaviors. What am I going to do about it? Because I no longer want that to go on for myself.
mm. I mean, you look at your journey and we talk about the burdens that you carried, and you spoke about how your parents splitting up took a massive toll on your life. Do you put it down to that? Do you put it down to your reactive behavior and not taking accountability all those years? Was their split up the one thing that triggered all of that for you, then not to be able to share what you were feeling and the anger and the frustration?
Yeah, and it's always because I meet so many kids who go through so much hell, like trauma, and so when I think of what I've been through, it's like, hang on, when I put it up next to others, it's sort of, should it have occupied my life the way that it did and as much as it did? And when it comes down to it, probably not. Like if I faced it a lot earlier, and it would have been a different story. but I guess it was sort of how I dealt with it as well. Like I just felt like it was my fault straight away when they split. I just blamed myself. And I think any young people or anyone I've learned, they just want to be loved, they want to be acknowledged, and they want to be listened. Like if we can get those three things going for anyone, and my wife says it all the time, which is amazing for our kids. They just want to be loved and feel safe. Like that's all kids want. And for a long time, I didn't feel that. In my formative years, I went and lived with my father in Far North Queensland, and I wasn't real impressed with what I saw, the behaviours that I saw, and I came back down to the Goldie and lived down on the Goldie, and I just spent a lot of my time looking for role models, looking for people that would almost guide me or lead me, in the way that I wanted. And I guess, and I don't know how this sounds either, but I almost guess sometimes I was looking for an apology, and looking for my parents to say sorry. And my mum, who I just love dearly, um, she would do that all the time. And I'd drink, and she would drink with me. I would get aggressive, and she would cry, and she would just apologize like for hours on end. She'd say, "I'm so sorry, darling. I'm so sorry." And I would say, "You don't know what it's like, rah rah." And but I never did that with my father. With him, I would be with him and I'd hang out with him and I'd just want to please him. I want to impress him and I'd want him to be proud of me. But he never was. Yet my mother was all of those things. Yet I'd argue with her, but I wouldn't with him. Um, and yeah, I learn a lot. Like my mother just wanted to be loved. She wasn't getting that in her relationship, and it's a pretty brave thing to also stand up and go, like I want more in my life. I deserve more. Um, and yeah, I think for me it was always just that. What am I looking for here? How am I going to get it? And more so, why can't I get it? Like simple things like watching families have Sunday lunches, and you're there going, "Well, my old man's in Far North Queensland, and my mum's down here," and yeah, like just that simple thing of family that so many kids and people I meet don't have. But I just think I probably reacted to it nowhere near as well as I could have. I'll definitely own that. There's certainly things I could have done that would have made it a lot easier for the people around me, that's for sure.
If you look back on the behaviors that you used to pursue in order to fill that void almost inside of you of wanting to be loved, of wanting to get the approval and be enough, why do you think you pursued those behaviors? Like, why did you turn to the alcohol and why did you, decide to go into these outbursts and things like that and
Mm,
fall into the victim mindset? Because as you said, there can be a point where you can switch it or you can go seek help,
yeah,
or even when you reach those turning points where people gave you a bit of a slap in the face.
I wish I had a
Why
pen
didn't
to
you
write this
change?
because I love what you've just asked. And you might have to prompt me again if I go off to the side, because the first one, like, why alcohol? Alcohol is one of the greatest ways to show that we're emotional and as fellas, and let's just as humans, because when you're drunk, you're allowed to tell people you love them. I love you, mate. You're my best friend. And you also can be aggressive, like, "Oh, yeah, right, mate, let's go outside and we'll sort it out." And the next day, when people, when you see your mate who you told you loved, because you do love him, but you want to tell him, but you can't because men don't do that. But you say, "Hey, geez, mate, did I get a bit, did I tell you I loved you last night?" "Yeah, don't worry, you were drunk. It's all good, mate." So it's just an awesome excuse, but you can get this off your chest, but it's not real. And then the other one you said, the victim. The victim is easy. It's easy to be the victim. I can walk around and go, "You don't know what it's like. You don't know that no one cares." And what I'm looking for is people around me to feel sorry for me. And I'm looking for people around me to pity me and do all those sort of things and give me, the same sort of love that a little boy would get when he wakes up scared in the middle of the night, or, he's lost his favorite toy. Like that's what you're looking for, right? That's easy, but it's not how you're meant to behave, right? The challenge is, like, I always say in Find Your Feet, I say to young people, you know, in life, we get an opportunity to turn left and do all the easy stuff and play the victim like I did, or do we turn right into the challenge? And I never turned right into the challenge. And by saying that, I never ever went, you know what? That's my mum and dad's stuff. That's not my stuff. You know, I'm Tommy Herschel. Like, I'm a good kid. I'm 12 years old. I live in Chugs. I play at the Seahawks. I've got great mates around me. I surf daily. Like, and I love, like, and I guess I never loved myself. I never valued myself. And I've even mentioned it to you before that I started doing this. Like, that self-worth thing is still a big thing for me. So what I did was I just went looking for all these unhealthy ways to fill those holes. But, you know, if you look at one of our ambassadors, who's one of my great mates, Kai Hurst, you know, and I won't tell his story because it's his story, but he had some awful things go on in his life when he was a young fella, like awful, right? And he goes on and wins the Uncle Toby's at 17. You know, he gets a challenge and he's faced with a challenge. And what Kai does straight away goes, well, how can I grow from this? What can I take from this? What am I going to do? Whereas I would be like, well, poor me, you know, I'm the victim. Why has it got to happen to me? Life's so unfair. So yeah, that victim mentality was really easy. And a lot of the people too that I was spending time around, they let me be the victim. No one held me accountable for poor behavior. And there's so many ways of doing that. So I would go out and drink and be the life of the party and laugh and do all stupid things. I'd come home and my darling wife would challenge me and go, why have you been out again? How are you? Like, what's going on? I'd argue, I'd cry, no one knows what it's like, I'd fall asleep, I'd wake up hungover. And she would be like upset about what I've done the day before. No one would be contacting her or me. I soon realized that the guys, yeah, that I was around were enabling me to do that all the time. And it wasn't until I had that mate who answered the phone that night and said, no more, mate. Like, you can't do this anymore. You can't be the victim. You've got to step up. And he set a standard. And, you know, that was, again, like, that was that moment I found my feet and I started to spend time around people that I used to go out and drink 20 beers and get home at 2 a.m. Like, I now hang around people that get up at 2 a.m. and run 20K. So yeah, it was about looking at what that victim mentality was doing to me and how it was holding me back, and looking at where I'm at now, where I'm hopefully a survivor, I'd call it, or surviving. It's probably better because I still have moments where I fall into the victim, and you're allowed to do that because we're human. But now that I'm a survivor or I'm surviving, I'm running marathons. I'm out surfing as much as I can. I'm an active father, an active husband. When arguments happen with my wife, instead of saying, you know, how dare you say that to me, I go, she's having a bad day. Like, it's not about me. This isn't about me. And, you know, yeah, I've been really lucky that my wife has taught me so much of that stuff. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. And I'm so lucky that I got to marry someone like I did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's funny, I mean, when we talk about there's a lot of holes that we try to fill, like everybody tries to fill. Normally it does come around the holes of wanting to be loved and wanting to feel of worth to people. And so often we're told you've just got to fill it up yourself. And while that is,
Mm.
yes, completely valid, as we do mention, there is that longing and that need for connection and people and a community. How do people navigate that? Because sometimes as well,
That's
having
my little
places
dog.
where oh, you're right. Places where you are alone sometimes aren't helpful for people as well because they can't go through life on their own and having, as you mentioned, someone to keep them accountable when they are struggling. So, where is that balance? How do we find that balance in terms of loving yourself enough so that you don't need that validation from other people,
Yeah.
but also staying connected to people that are right for you?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's codependency, really, isn't it?
Mm, mm.
And I was far out. I mean, I was Mr. Codependent for 15 years. I better tell my little mate. I just,
Oh,
I tell his
yeah.
mates some noise. This is one of my little codependent little tools. Unfortunately, my little
Fair.
mate.
To be fair.
Um, Yeah, well, it's about learning, codependency, and isn't it? And are you codependent on people, and how do we exhibit sort of those behaviors, I guess. Um, like for me, I never wanted to be on my own. Like I just always had to be around people. I could never set boundaries. I never had any self-discipline. Um, they're all things that I was a people pleaser, first to the pub, last to leave. Um, and I used to that's how I roll until I started to be around people that would be like, mate, I'm going for 2 beers and I'm going home. I've got sport tomorrow. My kids are my priority. Like, I love you, Tommy, you're a mate of mine, but I love my wife and my kids more. Sorry. So yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered the question, or
Mm.
yeah, asking is yeah.
When
I think
you were in
once
that, when you,
what's that?
sorry to interrupt, but when you were in that, and obviously you mentioned now how you acknowledge that you had a beautiful wife and a beautiful family, how did you not recognize that at that time?
Yeah, geez, that's a really good question and a hard one to answer. And I've never been asked it ever. How did I not realize that? Because I was so deep in the hole of victimhood and anger and rubbish that I was struggling to even get my head above water or above the sand. And the reason I was struggling to get my head above sand is because I just hadn't done the work, never had done the work on myself. Um, but yeah, I look back and I wish that I did do it early, because I don't like to think of the impact I've had on my beautiful little girl Betty, and my little boy Alf, and my wife. But then when I flip that, I go, I'm really lucky that I have turned it around. Betty was probably 7 well, Betty was 7, yeah, when I turned it all around. And gosh, we still have arguments as families, and there's still those moments, but as a family, our lives are completely different. And I'm grateful that that happened now, because it could have lost a lot simply by um, not being present enough with them. But yeah, you know what? I can't actually give an answer to that, of how I didn't see it earlier. I just can't. And I'm happy that you've asked me that, and I'd love to investigate that more, and why didn't that happen earlier? I guess Bass came into my life, and my wife was so patient and so strong for so long that eventually, like I say to boys, it's like we jam everything into a Coke bottle, and we throw our own Coke bottle into the fridge until one day we pull it out in front of everyone and it explodes. And that's what happened to me that night in the house here. And now, I've got the tools where I go to that Coke bottle and I teach young fellas, we just take the lid off just a little bit and lets out a little bit of air and a little bit of pressure, and that's what we've got to get better at. But again, yeah, I don't know how to answer that one, of how I didn't see it earlier. It's a great question. Middle stump.
Yeah, we love that. And we talk about almost this past version of yourself, and it sounds like you hold so much anger and frustration for that version of you. Have you healed that relationship with that person?
With me.
Mm.
Yeah, geez, you hang on with these questions, mate. I reckon I have. I reckon I have. Or I'm on my way to, really on my way to. So, and how do you know that you've got a poor relationship with yourself? This is me personally, but for me, it wasn't being like having discipline with myself. So giving myself time to do things. So never taking a surf trip or never going away with mates I would never do. Um, Speaking to myself kindly, I still struggle with that. I still struggle with valuing myself. Do I ever have meltdowns anymore and sit here on the veranda and drink glass of rum after rum after rum and cry and listen to sad music and feel sorry for myself? No, like those days are over. I do this activity with my participants, which is rock, timber, and glass, and it's awesome. Like the rock is all of our heavy stuff, And for me, like I talk about that person, the other me that I had that poor relationship with, and everything that I'd gone through and was going through, that rock was a symbol of it. Rocks are dark, they're heavy, they're hard to move. If we don't move them, we trip over them. If we leave them sitting long enough, we have barnacles grow on them and slime, and then they become slippery, they cut us. Hard to move, right? The old me held me there for so long. And like I mentioned before, it was easy to be in that place. It wasn't until I started to repair that relationship with myself and forgive myself and step up to the plate and say, you know what, I need help and I'm looking forward to help because I'm looking forward to no longer damaging my wife and kids. But I'm also looking forward to running marathons. I'm looking forward to getting up sober and swimming and surfing. I'm looking forward to having conversations with mates that are healthy and strong and not, that typical bloke sort of conversation. And that's the day, yeah, that I guess I moved up to the timber. And yeah, like I said, it's an amazing question. Have I forgiven that person? I still have days where awesome stuff happens for me and I'm like really proud of myself and I'm like, we're on here, this is awesome. And then I have days where things slow up and I'm like start to doubt myself and do all those things. But again, that's because I'm not perfect and I'm never going to be perfect and I'm never going to pretend to be perfect. I'm just human. So now it's about when I get into those moments where I start to kick the stone and I go back to the stone, I go, hang on a second. I'll call my mate Nick. He'll be doing a 10K run. And when I do a 10K run, I get 2Ks into it and I go, yeah, solid. You're good. You can run. You're a runner, mate. Go running. Or I go for a surf with my mate Murph and I paddle halfway out and I go, that's all you need. You just need to do that. You need to go for a surf. Or I ring my mate, Mitchy Marsh, one of our ambassadors and Australian cricket captain, and I have an honest, vulnerable conversation with him. And yeah, I go back to that timber and I go, awesome. My little team, I've got them around me. I've got good men around me and good women around me, and I deserve to be happy, I guess.
Mm. Were you terrified of stepping in or finding a new version of yourself where you weren't becoming reliant on people, but you were attracting different people, you were stepping into a different lifestyle and recreating yourself based on a storyline that you were really yet to write?
No, I was excited, mate. I was so excited. I was so pumped. Like, I remember when I walked out of this rehab place in Sydney. I only was there a day, but I went back there and stuff for meetings. So, but I walked out of there, and the first thing I did was ring my old man, and I told him what I'd done, and he goes, "Oh well, I guess you'll stop being a dickhead now." And that's a really shitty comment to make, but I knew I was on the road out of where I was at because I didn't bite at it. It didn't trigger me. I went, "That's your shit, man. You're kidding. Like I'm going for it." And another fella, and I don't think I've ever told this fella this, but there was a guy around where I live here, Aiden, who's a great fella, and he used to do 2, 4, 6 weeks off the beers, and I'd look at him and I'd just admiration for him, and he said, "Try it with me, mate. Do it." And I remember doing it for 4 days and broke, and I was like, "Mate, I've gone out of beer." He goes, "Bro, you went 4 days, like well done." And I was just excited about being around those sort of people and overcoming these hurdles that in the past I'd tripped over, whereas now I was learning how to jump over them. Yeah, and I think one of the most amazing moments that I had, in that new me was being at a party like a week after it. All the boys were down one end of the bar, one end of the veranda, and I remember being at the other end with my wife and one of her friends and just having a conversation. And I was having a water. And I think it was one of the first times I'd probably behaved as a functioning adult husband in our relationship in a really long time. And I remember being proud of myself for doing that. So yeah, it's like I said, it's been exciting and I looked forward to it and I think that's what drives me every single day is every single day there's an opportunity to be better. So when anxiety comes across my desk, I go, all right, well, how am I going to deal with it today? And there's a reason I've got that anxiety. I haven't slept much, or I'm away too much, or I'm working too much. Yeah, I find growth now in those areas awesome.
That's incredible. How do we share this message to young people? Because obviously you mentioned you're going through this in your 30s. And a lot of us do, we go through it later in life. But when the problem or the issue or a situation is triggered in the early years, how do we share a message to young people to we need to be able to support you and deal with this now so that you don't go through years of trouble and of angst? Where's the prevention start?
Yeah, well, man, it's like workshops like you and I are out doing, and lots of other awesome organizations are out there doing. I think for me, it's personally, it's about giving them the skills to go past that how are you. So, I always teach young crew, there's a couple of rules that they live by. And one of them is don't dog your mates, or, girls will say don't snitch, guys will say don't snitch. But, underlying the rule is don't dog your mates. And then the other one is, take risks. And I go, well, explain what that means. And I do stupid stuff to fit in and impress everyone. We want to be safe. So you have a conversation around that. And I go, well, you know what? If you've got a friend who's doing stupid stuff and you don't tell someone about it or you don't tell them, you're actually dogging your mate. Like that's dogging your mate. And the penny drops. And I give them that example of my friend on the phone saying, don't ring me like this anymore. And I say to do that though, they've got to take a risk. They're risking that they're going to lose you as a friend forever because you might say, you know what, whatever you're this or you're that. So what we need to do is be able to go, you know what, I'm telling you this and I'm taking this because I love you and I want to be your friend and I want to be around good people. So then it's about, I think, being able to put that into verbal, into language, which is we all say, and I say to them, I give them a story, I go, when we say, how are you? Well, how are you going? What do we say? We say good, and I give them a story of when I was at PBC and I remember one Monday morning, a couple of fellas like, how you going, Tommy? What'd you do on the weekend, you loose unit? And I was like, I had 20 guys in front of me. I was like, went down the footy club, we stole a carton of beer, we rocked roofs through Tugan, didn't show up home till late. Mum was pissed off, so pretty much yelled at her and yeah, I had a hell weekend. And everyone laughs. And I remember a friend like that was sitting in that group. Everyone left and he stuck around and he goes, Tommy, how you really going, mate? Because that was a load of shit. Like what you just said there, man. He goes, that's not you, man. He goes, you're a Tugan boy and you run around Tugan throwing rocks on roofs. Like that's your town. And he goes, as well as that, like your mum, like what are you talking about? And he was a bit of an older fella. But I remember thinking, wow, this guy's actually interested in what's going on. And I said to him, mate, Macca was his name. I said, Macca, yeah, it's not good, man. Dad was meant to come down on Friday and he didn't. I haven't seen him for ages and went down the footy club and made a heap of poor decisions. And yeah, we rocked roofs and yeah, I didn't know how to tell mum I was angry. So I yelled at her and I stayed at my mate Stewie's all weekend. And yeah, to be honest, mate, I've got a fair bit of anxiety. And I explain to young people, I go, what's the difference between that first story that I told all the boys compared to the second one that I told Macca? And they say the first one, you put on a mask, pretended everything was all right, and you just got on with it. And the second one, I was honest, I was real. And the beauty of that second one, I tell them is my good friends like Macca are going to jump in and go, well, mate, let's not go to that party this weekend. Let's not do what you plan on doing. And mate, as well as that, did you know that my old man's not around much? And I struggle with that. So, mate, I want to talk more with you, and I give them then a sporting analogy. Um, I say like Nico Hines is one of our ambassadors. When he came up from Melbourne to play at Cronulla, imagine if he doesn't say anything about an injury he's got. He comes up, he runs sand hills, blows his knee out, and he doesn't play footy all year, right? So he's put on a mask and pretended that he's okay. But if he's honest enough to say, hey, look, I'm coming up, but I've done something to my knee, what happens is the rehab team get photos of his knee. They do this. They put a support plan around him. They get a rehab group around him. He misses 4 or 5 weeks of footy, and he has a bit of downtime. But he comes back and plays the best rugby league that he's played. And it's the same with us. So if you've got a friend that's going no good, and they're honest enough to tell you, you as a group of friends are able to put a support plan around them and help them. As well as that, though, if you've got the ability to do that, you've got the ability to put a support group around yourself. So yeah, it's a big message with Find Your Feet is, the safe thing is to have 100 friends and do what everyone does. The strong thing to do is find your feet, find 2 or 3 good friends who are going to be there for you at all times. and are going to have those conversations. And when you have those conversations, like I was at a school the other day up on the way to Brizzy, and a young person stood up and talked about how their brother was involved in drugs and tried to take their own life, and it got to the point of one day where they put their head in a noose and they went to do it themselves, and they just broke and started to cry, and went into their mother's room and just broke down and let everything out. And they say it wasn't until that day that they actually realized that they had to step up to the plate and they had to do something about it. When they came to school and they told two friends, the two friends didn't have an answer or a solution for them, but they simply listened, and they got around them and they hugged them. And those two friends, that was back in grade 7, those two friends have been there for the last 4 years, and they'll realistically probably never go anywhere. Um, so yeah, how do we get it? How do we get this out there and get young people turning their, I guess, world around? I think it's just by surrounding themselves with real friends who aren't going to dog them and are going to take a risk in a healthy way.
I couldn't agree more. And it's just such this big fear around being alone. And
Mm,
I understand it, like being there myself. And as I said, like going to PBC as well, and being at that school when there's heaps and hundreds of people in your grade, and yet you can feel so alone, so isolated, and you just want to fit in. Like it sounds so simple. You just want
mm,
to find your people, your place, and feel like you're accepted. And that's where like these behaviors you can see like play out for generations because people are trying to find their tribe and people that accept them and want them, but often fall short. And that's where, unfortunately, we see suicide rates increase, we see
mm,
mental health rates increase because we're trying so hard to be somebody else for just one person to accept us and love us that we always feel like we're falling short. And that's where I know even in our space working with young people, it's really hard to mentor them to be, find your best version and find yourself and what are your strengths, and surround yourself by people that positively motivate you to embody your strengths and to do better and to be better. But as young people, it's also hard to see that and to want to work on that when the
mm.
fear of being alone is so much larger.
Yeah, exactly. There's a way that I love to smash in the workshop. So like it's do this thing, find your feet if, which you've seen, find your feet if you've been lonely, if you've felt anxious, if you've experienced suicide, this, that, and the rest. And then at the end to say, find your feet if you've ever had a challenge going on. Sorry, find your feet if you're always there for your friends no matter what. 100% of the room normally stand up, and they a lot of banging chest, a lot of I'm always there for you. And then the next one is find your feet if you've ever had something going on and you haven't reached out, and you'll get 90% stand up. And I say, give me 4 reasons why you haven't. And normally you get the same 4, and they always are, I don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want to be judged. It's my issue, not theirs. I'll deal with it on my own. I hear that across Australia. Corporate situations, through to footy teams, through to basketball, netball teams, across the board, right? I say, okay, and I write them up, and then I just turn back and I go, I'd love to hear from someone on one of these, like what you spoke about. The other day at this school, I had this champion stand up, talk about bullying. He said, I just don't get to be me. I don't get to be the man that I want to be. I'm so scared of being who I am. And it was incredible. There was tears for him. His mates standing around him. They had their arms on him. Like girls were turning around looking at him. They were in tears. They had no idea of his story. And he spoke about how dark it gets for him in the places he goes. And he says, I try to do things to make myself feel better about myself. So I don't swear. I don't ever talk down to anyone. I don't talk ill of anyone. And it was incredible. Out of nowhere, this dude turns around, real popular fella down the front, and he goes, Jesus, mate. He spoke like an old bush. He goes, Jesus, mate. He goes, I've always looked at you and I've behaved like a dickhead in front of you. But today you've really changed my opinion on who you are, and you've made me think a lot about what I need to do. It was incredible. So many tears in the room. And I said, how does this feel? And like people were going, this is amazing. They're saying this kid, like, you're incredible for doing what you've done. You've spoken for so many of us. And you got about 10 people giving him this huge rap, and the emotion in the room, the energy of the room was epic. And then I drop it on them, and I do this on all the workshop. I drop it on them. I go, well, you guys said you don't want to do that, what we just did. And they go, what? I go, yeah. And I press a button, and up comes the screen that says excuse wall. And it's got what they said, the reasons why we don't reach out. And I said, let's rewrite this. Let's put that little legend on the spot, and let's remember what he just did, but let's rewrite it. Anyone feel burdened by what they shared? Nah, we feel inspired. Like we feel like what a legend. Exactly. Anyone going to judge him? No way in the world. If we were to put words, he's strong. All right, let's ask this one. Anyone feel like he should have to go through the next 2 years here at school, the rest of his life on his own, and not deal with this? No. Who wants to stand up for this fella every single time they see him now and acknowledge him for who he is? You get 100% stand up and go, exactly. We love doing this. We enjoy when we do it. We just need to get better at it. If we've got the ability to tell our story or the platform, I guess that's a big thing with Find Your Feet. We give a platform to tell a story, skills to own your stuff, and then the tools to shift that culture. Like for me, it would have been a completely different world. I was really lucky. I had a great friend who went through high school with me, Chugan fella, and I had him come and sit in on a school workshop at PBC once. And I told the story about how when I came back to PBC, I just missed my dad so much, and I was heartbroken, I was lost. And I gave that to the boys. And then at the very end of the workshop, in front of everyone, my mate said, "Hey, Tommy, can I say something to you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I wish you told me that when we were here at school, because I would have treated you differently." He said, "You were one of my mates, but I gave you heaps of shit and I bullied you and we did the banter. If I knew you were struggling that much, I would have got around you more. So I'm really sorry, mate." And incredible, like if I did what I do now back when I was 14, 15, there's no way in the world I would have left so much destruction and trauma in my path, which my family are picking up or holding on to still. And it's my job to make up for that. And hopefully that's what I'm doing now. But, to put one of our ambassadors in that role as well is a guy called Sean Marsh, and he'd be fine with me telling the story, one of Australia's great cricketers. And he suffered a lot of anxiety and panic attacks. And it's a big thing for him. And I did a workshop at TSS called the Southport School called Beyond the Wicket with Sean Marsh. Knowing he suffers anxiety, I was like, "Sean, you don't have to speak. I just want you in the room with these young men." 11 boys were in the room, the first 11. And doing the rock, timber, glass. And this legend gets up about 4 into it and goes, "Tommy, I hate talking. Oh, I hate it. I get so much anxiety." And he was like falling over his lips, and his tongue was like, and he was cringing, and the minute he said, I hate doing this," he sort of relaxed a bit. He goes, "I'm real sorry. I'll do my best, but I'm not real good at it." Sean didn't say a word. He got up out of his chair. This is Sean Marsh, this is one of these kids, this is one of their heroes. Got up and walked over to this kid and put his arms around him. He goes, "Mate, I can't believe that you've done what you've done today. This is an incredible moment for me," because he said, "If I got to do what you did at 15, my career would have been completely different. I would have been a completely different athlete and human." He said and he turned and he's talking to the boys. He goes, "Boys, everyone thought at times I was arrogant and I was rude because I wouldn't speak to them as I saw them in the street, or I saw them and fans would come up and I would turn the other way. Not because I'm rude or arrogant, but because I struggle in those situations and I'm anxious." And I said to the boys, "Would you guys have thought, Sean Marsh struggles with that?" And they're like, "No way. He's a guy who's out in the middle and he's hitting runs and he's on the telly and he's famous." And I go, "Yeah, it doesn't matter about all that stuff, boys. He's human, you know?
Mm.
And how epic is it that he shared this today?" Like it normalized it for that group. And Sean stuck with that kid for like the next hour and a half. This kid didn't go training. He just sat on the side of the oval and talked to Sean. Now, Sean doesn't talk too often about his stuff to anyone. And that day, like he just went, boom, poured it all
Mm.
out to this 15-year-old boy. And so, yeah, it's about giving them the ticket to be able to do it. But as well as that, we have to give them the tools of how to do it. So, yeah, again, probably a long-winded answer, but hopefully I got around to the
No, you definitely did. And
question.
I think, like, do you believe that this is almost part of the problem? I mean, we hear in the media, kids get blamed, young boys get blamed, youth get blamed. They're not disciplined. Schools need to be doing better. Parents need to be doing better. But in hearing the work that you were doing, and I know that I have seen it in the work as well in this space, it's not them. And I feel like blame doesn't get us anywhere. in your opinion and your experience, do you think that they just need a better environment in order to be supported rather than being blamed and stereotyped and told a certain way?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I think. I love that you put it that way, and it's making me think of this line I read in this awesome book the other day about form versus class. I think that's what it is, and I'll have a crack at it. But it's like when someone's in a sporting team, um, if they know that they're only going to be selected on form, there's going to be a real panic, and they've got to go out and make runs. They've got to swim certain times in the pool. They've got to make tackles. They've got to shoot hoops, and there's that panic. So that they go out and there's a fear that they're not going to be there. Whereas if they're judged on class, when they don't make runs for a couple of innings, the coach is there going, hey, like, you will come back. Like, I know you will improve because I know exactly who you are and the person you are, and the athlete you are. And it's the same with us. I think, I believe this anyways. If we don't set a standard to our friends that they have to stick to, and if they don't stick to them, we drop them straight away. They're allowed to be who they are. They're allowed to be who they need to be. So if we've got a friend who's having a bit of a rough time and doesn't show up for a few weeks at certain things, instead of going, no, I don't know where they are. They've dropped off, mate. They're weirdos anyway. Like, they don't speak. The person who judges that person on class is going to go, yeah, I spoke to them the other day. They're struggling. They've got things going on, and I'm there for them. Or, yeah, no, I haven't heard from them, and I'm worried. So thank you. Like, I probably need to reach out to them. So we do. We've got this set of rules that we keep each other to, or friends to, and young people especially have. Like, I even said to a young person the other day, I said, oh, I was really grateful to hear that year 12 girls don't use Snapchat. And this young person said to me, yeah, well, they were in year 9. I said, yeah, well, my friends don't. It's sort of fading out as well, but we still use it because everyone's still on it. If that makes sense. Like, it's still so instead of someone stepping up and going, you know what, I'm not going to use that anymore. Like, it's just not what I do. They're still running to these rules of, well, everyone's still on it. So that's the way that I have to communicate. Yeah, so I guess it's about giving them those alternatives, or just far out being human, if that again makes sense, maybe. At the end of
Mm.
another rant I gave you.
That's what we're here for. We're just here to rant basically the
Yeah,
whole
I love
time.
that form versus class though. Like, I just think that's
Mm,
such a great line. Um, yeah, yeah.
incredible. Well, this has been an amazing conversation with you, Tommy, and I thank you so much. I do want to end on some couple of questions, though. So maybe get your reflection cap on. But I wanted to ask firstly, with everything that you have been through in your journey thus far, what is the one takeaway or lesson that you feel that you have carried with you that you put as a high standard today?
Oh, gee, that's a very big question. That I need to follow. You think?
I
Yeah.
think one that you've learned and that is sticking with you is even just the first thing that pops into your head is
Yeah.
normally the best one.
The first one, yeah, well, and it's one that it's not about you. I just made
Mm.
everything about me forever. And it's not about you. So when someone's having a bad day, instead of reading into it and doing all those easy things I talked about and thinking, oh, they're off me, they're not into me anymore, or this, that, the rest, I just go, oh, they're having a bad day. Okay, they're allowed to behave like that because they're human. So yeah, I think that's probably the best one that I can stick to
So
now
true too.
about
So
you.
true though. The amount of
Yeah,
times that even I catch myself and like someone will make a comment or someone will do something and I will go into my world and think, oh my God, they hate me. They don't like
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I've got to try and fix this. And half the
yeah.
time it's not, you just make shit up in your head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're our own worst enemies, and yeah, we can write a story, that's for sure.
Now, your legacy. If you look at something that you think that when you leave this lifetime, or something that you want to leave for your kids or your family, what is the one thing that you think that you believe you want to leave the people to know you by?
Oh gosh, that's another. Another ripper. Um, oh, yeah, I think I'd said it maybe earlier on, which is um, something I didn't do forever, which is allowed people maybe to be heard, feel safe. And this is something I'm still not that good at. Like I'd be lying if I was to say that I'm good at that. I'm still learning it with my own kids and my own wife. But yeah, that he made you feel heard, he made you feel safe, acknowledged and loved. Maybe I think that's like if I was to think why the other day I was thinking about it. I don't know why I started thinking about it, but I was thinking, why do I do this work? Like, why do I go around and meet all these champion young crew who are going through all this stuff, and why do I listen to them? Why do I give them the opportunity to tell their story? And I think it's because I never was given that opportunity. And I sort of, yeah, like sort of feel like I wasn't, maybe sometimes like I just wanted to sit down as a young person and have those conversations and try to work it out and understand why and get that network around me and when I see it happen in the rooms, like it's just magical, to use a corny word, but it's just magical. So yeah, someone who created a kind, caring, safe place, wasn't an expert. I don't like, these people who call themselves experts. It was someone who's just one of us who was doing his best along the journey. So
Mm.
yeah, and you asked me that word, legacy. There it is.
Universal moment.
Yeah,
That's
universal
incredible.
moment. Um,
Because, and I can honestly vow to that because sitting in one of your workshops, I think that's what got me personally was that you created an environment that one was safe, but you allowed people to feel heard. And in my own journey and what I've seen, that's the one thing we all want is to be seen, to
mm,
be heard, and in return, just to feel some sort of love. And you are creating that whether
mm,
you think so or not. And this is not an ego bashing chest moment. This is what I have felt in a room with you and how you created that for young people. And it's phenomenal. And I wish there was more of you out there that could do this work with so many young people because you made such an important impact on my life that day. So I only can imagine the amount of people that you were touching with the work that you were doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was awesome. It's this story, a classic little one. The other night, I'd been out with Mitch, Mitchy Marsh, who's pretty well known these days, and the Aussie captain and one of our ambassadors, but just a great mate. And I have a beer these days, right? Having a beer these days for me is enjoyable because I don't get angry anymore, and it's just fun. And obviously there's a lid on it. But we ended up at the Tuga McDonald's at like 11:30, and classic. We're in there like kids and we came out and they looked at like these group of kids, young boys looked at us and they'd, I think, had a few beers. But they looked at Mitch and they sort of knew him. And then they looked at me and they go, "No way, dude. You're that find your feet fella." And I was like, "Yeah, boys, how you going?" They're like, "Man, like you changed everything that happened in our school." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, boy. Yeah, awesome." They go, like, no, mate, like completely changed everything from the way we spoke to the girls in our grade to the way we spoke to each other. And I was sitting there listening to it, and Mitch was there, like, on the other side, just looking back, just going like, "Wow." And he said it to me last night, when we were reflecting on the weekend that we had away. He goes like, "Mate, I've never been involved in anything like this. Um, I'm so grateful to be involved in something like this." And for someone like him who's leading a country into this World Cup and there's all these press conferences, all this glitz and glamour around for him, like for him to be in and amongst those boys when they're just like talking about the impact it had and the change it had, it was incredibly important. It was like he realized, I think, that these young men can do it. And until you see it in action, like, saw that day, you can't describe it to anyone. He'd been at a workshop, and I don't know if I said it earlier, but he walked up to a boy at the end of a workshop. There's a boy-girl workshop at this school up near Cooma, He walked over to a fella and said, "Mate, that was one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen." Now, this is a boy who just spoke about nearly taking his own life and finally being seen. And I said to Mitch when we were, one night when we were on the road, I said, "Mate, every time that young fella watches you play cricket now on the television in front of 100,000 people at the MCG, he won't care for the people around, the crowd around you or anything like that. He'll be looking at you as like, I shared a moment with that fella." And how incredible is that? So yeah, the boys and the girls in the workshop do the work though. Like I want to leave it on that. I'm just the I guess the facilitator. They're the ones who say the incredible things. A lot of the time, I don't know if you know, so I don't say incredible things. The other week I was in a workshop and a fella stood up and it was an amazing one. He beat at his chest and talked about, this is out in the bush. He talked about how his dad makes him macho and rah rah, and he sat back down, and then a woman got up, a young girl got up after it and said, and this is the heavy one, but she said, "I was sexually assaulted in grade 3." And it went completely quiet. And I looked at her and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm stumped. It's the end of the term. I said, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. And this boy looks over at me, he had just spoken. He goes, "Tommy, I reckon I might have something to say." And I said, "Mate, go for it." And he stood up in front of everyone. He walked out and he put his hand out so he didn't go near her because he knew that this was a heavy moment for her. He put his hand out and he said, "For every person in this community that's ever made you feel intimidated, for every man that's ever disrespected you, I want to apologize. I want you to know that every time you walk into this school, you're going to be acknowledged, you're going to be heard and respected. You're an incredible person. And I'm so grateful that you shared." He said, "I remember like school with you has always been so awesome. You're always so happy." And he said, "Oh, I was in your class in grade 3." And this girl just literally just lunged out and grabbed him and held him and put her head into his shoulder. And she just bawled her eyes out. The whole class got up except for one girl that was next to me. And she just sat next to me and just cried. And when everyone sat down, I was like, "Guys, again, I'm stumped. You incredible young people." And this girl just she talked over the top of me and said, "To you who just spoke, to the boy, you're every bit the man that one day I want to marry." And it was a moment like I'll never ever forget. Like she said,
Mm.
what you just did is every bit of the men that we need. We need men to stand up and be strong and talk the way you did. And I'm so grateful that you did that. I didn't do any of that. I didn't give those words.
Oh my God.
I give those words, and
Mm.
and you leave going, wow. Oh, and you leave going, the person who leaves going, "Oh, I just did this amazing workshop. It's all about them." I leave going, I was so blessed to be in that workshop because I learn things, and I grow from it. So yeah, I appreciate like what you said about what you saw, but as you see, it's the young people in there that do the magic, and we're just lucky to be on the ride with them.
Yeah, it's like we just provide the space and really they do. They're the leaders of their
Yeah.
own life. You just got to give them that opportunity.
Yeah, and it's like how you are with your work and what you do with, your social media and all. It's about being real and vulnerable
Mm,
and honest and open. And they see that, you
mm,
know, they see straight through you when you're out the front saying you're an expert. They're like, "Whatever.
mm,
You're just a muppet
mm.
like us. You're just doing your best." And we love you for
Yeah,
it's like that. So yeah, thank you
yeah.
for what you do as well.
No, no, thank you. And yeah, I completely agree. I think we got to stop labeling and start believing and creating these young
Mm.
people the space for them because they actually have so much to give and they have so much love and voice just to share. It's just we have to provide that space instead of labeling them. So thank you so much for doing that and the work that you do. And thank you for coming on today and sharing all that you have with your story and what you're doing at Find Your Feet. I'm so grateful to have you on. Where can people find you and find your feet if they want to get
Yeah.
involved, bring you a workshop?
So find yafeet.org.
Sorry.
My little bloke always laughs. FINDYA feet.org. And then social media is at find ya feet. That's the Instagram. I'm not that good on the TikTok. I've probably got to get better. And then LinkedIn as well. So yeah, in those areas. And yeah, we've got a mental mechanic out there now, which is epic too. So he's at a couple of schools, and he's like a guidance officer or a youth worker, but he's there to so young people can go and have a conversation and a chat and get that service instead of being the Find Your Feet panel beater, which is that bloke who's there who is there when they crash and burn. So I always explain to young people, go and see the mechanic now, get your oil changed, your tires changed, work on your stuff, and don't leave it until the panel beater when you're picking the debris up off the ground. So yeah, our mental mechanics out there as well in a few schools, so young people might come across him as well. But yeah, that's where you can find us. You might need to edit that
Amazing.
last bit out. That was me, just a solid ramble. I'm good at that.
Absolutely not. What did we just talk about? Honesty, being raw, being
Yeah.
real.
No, I know, but the mechanic, everyone's going, what's this bloke got? It's someone who services cars now. Jesus, what's he
No,
doing?
I love it. Thank you so much, Tommy. And thank you as well to everyone else out there for joining us for another Secret Sunday session. We will catch you all next time.
The science behind, let's say, fructose and why bananas are not going to make you fat, right? Like knowing that on a factual level is one thing.